You think modern customs are weird? Wait until you hear what people in biblical times considered completely normal. We're talking about practices so bizarre that if you tried them today, you would either end up in jail or viral on TikTok for all the wrong reasons. I'm about to take you through the top 10 strangest biblical customs that will make you realize just how different life was 3,000 years ago. These aren't just random traditions. Each one reveals something shocking about ancient culture, power dynamics, and human nature that still influences us today. From body mutilation as warfare strategy to the most awkward marriage proposal in history, these customs are so outrageous that modern people can barely believe they actually happened. But they did, and understanding them will completely change how you read these ancient stories. If you're ready to discover biblical practices that are stranger than fiction, make sure you're subscribed, because this episode will blow your mind and probably make you grateful you live in the 21st century.
Number 10. Cutting off thumbs and big toes of defeated kings. Let's start with what might be the most brutal custom on our list. When ancient armies defeated enemy kings, they didn't just kill them or take them prisoner. They cut off their thumbs and big toes. This wasn't random cruelty, it was strategic psychological warfare. Judges 1, 6-7 tells us about Adoni-Bezek, a Canaanite king who had done this to 70 other kings. When he was finally captured, the Israelites did the same thing to him. His response? "As I have done, so God has repaid me." Why thumbs and big toes? Simple. Without thumbs, you can't grip a sword or bow. Without big toes, you can't balance properly to fight. This wasn't just punishment, it was permanent military neutralization. These kings would live, but they'd never be warriors again. The modern equivalent would be like hackers disabling a CEO's ability to use computers. You're alive, you can think, but you can't do the thing that made you powerful. But here's the psychological twist. These mutilated kings often became servants in the victor's palace, living reminders of conquest. Imagine having dinner every night with 70 former kings crawling around under your table picking up scraps.
Number 9. Ruth's foot uncovering marriage proposal. This might be the most misunderstood romantic gesture in history. Ruth chapter 3 describes what sounds like the most awkward seduction scene ever written. Naomi tells Ruth to wait until Boaz falls asleep, then uncover his feet and lie down. Modern readers either skip this chapter or assume something inappropriate happened, but this was actually an ancient Near Eastern legal custom for claiming protection and provision. In that culture, when someone uncovered feet, it was a symbolic way of saying, "I'm placing myself under your authority and protection." The feet represented the lowest part of the person, so uncovering them was an act of humility and submission. Ruth wasn't being inappropriate, she was following a recognized legal procedure. When Boaz woke up and found her there, he immediately understood she was asking him to be her kinsman redeemer, someone who would marry her to continue her dead husband's family line. It's like the ancient equivalent of sliding into someone's DMs, but with way more cultural protocol and legal implications. The really remarkable part? Boaz didn't take advantage of the situation. Instead, he covered her with his cloak, accepting responsibility for her protection, and made sure she left before dawn to protect her reputation. Ancient chivalry at its finest.
Number 8. Sandal contracts. Before lawyers and notaries, there were shoes. In ancient Israel, the most binding legal contract was sealed by taking off your sandal and handing it to the other party. Ruth 4:7-8 explains this was how they confirmed all land transfers and redemption rights. This wasn't just symbolic, it was practical. Your sandals were often your most valuable personal possession after your clothes. They protected your feet, marked your social status, and were expensive to replace. Giving someone your sandal was like posting serious collateral. The modern equivalent would be handing over your car keys, wedding ring, and social security card all at once. It meant, I'm so committed to this deal that I'm giving you something I literally can't do without. But here's where it gets interesting. The person receiving the sandal had to keep it until the contract was fulfilled. Imagine explaining to your wife why there's a random sandal in your house for the next 5 years. This custom was so important that Deuteronomy 25 describes a public humiliation ritual for men who refuse to fulfill family obligations. The woman would remove his sandal in front of the city elders and spit in his face. His family would forever be known as the House of the Unsandaled.
Number 7. Circumcision as covenant sign. Now we get to the custom that made Abraham question everything at age 99. Genesis 17 records God telling Abraham that every male in his household must be circumcised as a sign of the covenant. Abraham was 99, his son Ishmael was 13, and they had hundreds of servants. Imagine being Abraham's servant that day. You wake up thinking it's going to be a normal Tuesday, and by evening you're part of the most awkward group medical procedure in history. But this wasn't just about Abraham's family. This custom became so central to Jewish identity that it literally divided the ancient world into two groups, the circumcised and the uncircumcised. The Greeks and Romans thought this was barbaric. Jews thought everyone else was impure. When Jewish men wanted to participate in Greek athletics, which were performed naked, some actually underwent painful procedures to reverse their circumcision to avoid embarrassment. The custom was so distinctive that enemies could identify Jewish soldiers on battlefields. In 1 Samuel 18, Saul demands 100 Philistine foreskins as David's bride price, essentially asking for proof that he'd killed 100 specific enemies. This single custom shaped international relations, military strategy, and social identity for thousands of years.
Lot's daughter's desperate strategy. This is hands down the most uncomfortable story in Genesis. After Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, Lot and his 2 daughters hide in a cave. Believing they're the last people on earth, the daughters devise a plan to preserve the human race. Genesis 19:32-35 records their conversation. "Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father." So they get him drunk on consecutive nights. Lot is so intoxicated he doesn't remember what happened either night. Both daughters become pregnant. Modern readers are horrified, but ancient audiences understood this differently. These women believed they were facing human extinction. In their minds, this wasn't about desire, it was about species survival. They were making the ultimate sacrifice to ensure humanity continued. The really bizarre part? This plan worked, exactly as intended. Both sons became founders of major nations, the Moabites and Ammonites, who played crucial roles in Old Testament history. But here's the twist that reveals ancient values. The text never condemns the daughters. Instead, it presents their actions as desperate but necessary. In a survival situation, normal moral boundaries could be suspended for the greater good. This story reveals how differently ancient people thought about family, survival, and moral priorities.
Number 5. Vow-paying haircuts. In the ancient world, hair was power. Samson's strength was in his hair. Absalom's beauty was his hair. So when people made serious vows to God, they often promised their hair as payment. This wasn't just cutting your hair, it was a complete ritual. Number 6 describes the Nazirite vow, where people would grow their hair for months or years, then shave it completely off and burn it on the altar. Acts 18:18 mentions that Paul had his head shaved because he had taken a vow. Picture the Apostle Paul walking around completely bald as a public sign that he'd made a serious promise to God.
But here's what makes this really strange. Women could make these vows too. In a culture where a woman's hair was considered her glory and beauty, publicly shaving it off was a radical statement. The hair burning was crucial. You couldn't just cut it and throw it away. It had to be offered to God. Ancient people believed your hair contained part of your life essence. Burning it on the altar literally gave part of yourself to God. Some people made lifetime vows and never cut their hair. Others made temporary vows for specific requests. Either way, everyone in town knew your spiritual commitments just by looking at your head.
Number 4. Mourning through clothing destruction. When ancient people got upset, they didn't punch walls or post angry tweets. They tore their clothes. This wasn't just emotional expression, it was a precise cultural language. Genesis 37:34 describes Jacob tearing his clothes when he thought Joseph was dead. Job tore his clothes when he lost everything. King Hezekiah tore his clothes when threatened by Assyria. But there were rules. You couldn't just tear any old shirt. You had to tear your outer garment, usually from neck to waist. The more important you were, the more expensive the clothes you destroyed. Here's what makes this really weird. Everyone expected it. If someone died and you didn't tear your clothes, people would think you didn't care. It was like ancient emotional theater that everyone had to perform. The practical problem: clothes were incredibly expensive. Most people owned maybe 2 or 3 outfits total. Tearing your clothes in grief could literally leave you with nothing decent to wear for months. But social pressure was so strong that people did it anyway. Better to be properly dressed for mourning than improperly dressed for daily life. Some kings kept special mourning clothes just for tearing. They were expensive enough to show proper respect, but not so expensive that destruction would be financially ruinous.
Number 3. Dust and ashes grief therapy. When tearing your clothes wasn't enough, ancient people escalated to putting dirt on their heads. Not just a little dust. We're talking full body coverage with dirt, ashes, or mud. Job sat in ashes for weeks. Joshua put dust on his head when Israel lost an eye. David covered himself with earth when mourning Absalom. This wasn't random. In ancient thinking, humans were made from dust and would return to dust. Covering yourself with earth was a way of saying, I might as well be dead too. The really strange part was the social expectation. If you were grieving and showed up clean, people would be offended. You had to look as miserable as you felt. But here's the practical problem nobody talks about. Ancient people didn't have showers. Once you covered yourself with ashes and dirt, getting clean again was a major production involving lots of water and soap that most people couldn't afford. Some people stayed dirty for weeks or months during extended mourning periods. Imagine the smell and hygiene issues. Grief literally stank in the ancient world.
Number 2. Beard and tattoo prohibitions. Leviticus 19:27-28 contains one of the strangest fashion rules in history. You shall not shave around the sides of your head, nor shall you disfigure the edges of your beard. You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor tattoo any marks on you. This created the most specific grooming requirements in human history. Jewish men had to maintain exactly the right beard shape, full but with defined edges, never completely shaved but never ungroomed. The tattoo prohibition was equally specific. You couldn't cut yourself or get tattoos for mourning the dead, but the text seems to allow tattoos for other purposes. Bible scholars still argue about exactly what was forbidden. These rules created instantly recognizable identity markers.
You could spot Jewish men from their distinctive beard styles from across a crowded marketplace. But enforcement was complicated. How do you measure proper beard edges? Who decided if someone's grooming violated the law? Ancient religious authorities had to become fashion police. The modern equivalent would be a law requiring specific haircut styles with criminal penalties for violations. Imagine explaining to a judge why your sideburns were too short.
Number 1. Levirate marriage. Marrying your dead brother's wife. The strangest biblical custom is definitely levirate marriage, the requirement that when a man died childless, his brother had to marry his widow and have children in the dead man's name. Deuteronomy 25:5-10 makes this a legal obligation. If the brother refused, the widow could publicly humiliate him by removing his sandal and spitting in his face before the city elders. This created the most complicated family dynamics imaginable. Your sister-in-law might become your wife. Your nephew might legally be your son, but genetically your brother. Your father-in-law could become your father-in-law twice. The story of Judah and Tamar in Genesis 38 shows how twisted this could get. Judah's son dies childless. His brother Onan is supposed to marry Tamar, but refuses to father children in name. God kills Onan too. Now Judah's youngest son, Shelah, is supposed to marry Tamar, but Judah stalls. So Tamar disguises herself as a prostitute, sleeps with Judah, her father-in-law, and gets pregnant. When Judah finds out she's pregnant, he orders her burned alive for adultery. Then she reveals he's the father. The really shocking part? The text presents Tamar as the righteous one. She was protecting family lineage while everyone else was shirking their duties. This custom was so important that it's central to the book of Ruth and appears in Jesus' genealogy. Some of the most important people in biblical history exist because of this strange marriage practice.
These 10 customs reveal something fascinating about ancient life. What seems completely bizarre to us was perfectly normal to them. Every culture creates practices that seem logical from the inside, but weird from the outside. But here's what's really interesting. Many of these customs solved real problems. Cutting off thumbs and toes prevented future rebellion. Sandal contracts created binding agreements without lawyers. Levirate marriage protected widows and preserved family lines. The ancient world was harsh, unpredictable, and dangerous. People needed customs that ensured survival, maintained social order, and protected the vulnerable. What looks strange to us often made perfect sense in their context. The next time you read these biblical stories, remember you're not just reading ancient history, you're getting a window into completely different ways of thinking about family, law, grief, identity, and survival. These customs shaped the people who wrote the Bible, influenced the cultures Jesus lived in, and created the context for stories that still influence billions of people today. Which of these customs shocked you most? Can you imagine living in a world where any of these were normal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this episode opened your eyes to how strange and fascinating biblical culture really was, make sure you're subscribed. Next week, we're diving into the weirdest biblical deaths that will make today's customs look absolutely tame. Remember, every generation thinks their way of life is normal and everyone else's is weird. These ancient people were just as convinced their customs made perfect sense as we are about ours. The question is, what will future generations think about our practices 3,000 years from now?